Hey, can you see me in the back? Hey, ladder's fine. All right. Hey, everybody, welcome. We want to welcome you all here to the Mule, home of Devil's Foot Beverage and Distillery. We're here to shine a light today on the ongoing tariffs and how this impacts local businesses like farmers, brewers, retailers, industry, particularly in our region. I'm joined today by a number of fellow North Carolinians that include organic farmers, brewers, outdoor retailers, equipment manufacturers, and we represent a pretty broad, diverse sector of businesses here in Asheville and in North Carolina. All of us are going to be experiencing different impacts from the ongoing tariffs and retaliatory issues that are going to come from it. So a lot of us are a little bit concerned about our future. So as we all know, small businesses are the backbone of the American economy. We're here today to talk about the challenges that are going to affect those small businesses from Asheville and beyond. And I'm just happy that there's a whole slew of us here. We're not all brewers in Asheville. we have a wide array of businesses and entrepreneurs in Asheville, and we're hoping that we can speak to support everybody. But yeah, we'll do some questions at the end, but I would like to get started. So here at Devil's Foot Beverage, we create and craft farm to can, non-alcoholic sodas, zero proof cocktails, and also ready to drink canned cocktails. To do that, we require our supply chain of ingredients, of packaging materials, things like that, and these tariffs that are going to directly affect the obvious things like aluminum and steel that you can see behind us are used in a lot of our packaging and a lot of our production. We've been fortunate to kind of get ahead of some of this earlier in the year, but just by luck, and that we've got a lot of storage to hold equipment, but not everybody could get ahead for that, and it's going to catch up. Beyond the production costs that we're going to see, I'm already seeing everything from 8 to 11% increases to begin starting to see some of what the impacts are going to be. I don't think anybody wants to see them hit immediately, so we're seeing a ramp up. It's concerning, it's going to be expensive, it's going to require us all to make decisions. But also from my side, it's going to affect the ingredient side. We're farm to can product. We work with North Carolina farmers, Georgia farmers, South Carolina farmers, Virginia farmers. We work with regional people to bring in strawberries, blueberries, peaches. But the base of our product is a citrus product, and we bring in organic lemons and limes. A lot of times those commodities will have to come from a place like Mexico. We've developed a great relationship with farmers in Mexico to bring a commodity here for our use. And now that kind of relationship's in jeopardy, and those prices are going to move, and we're all going to have to respond to it. So I think just my last point is that this community has faced a lot in the last year. And as we're all building out of this, as we're all growing and expanding, we're not hunkering down anywhere. Asheville grows. We're strong, we're proud, we're active, and this is just an additional challenge that's gonna hurt all of us, and it's gonna affect our prices, our customers, the consumers in the end. Some of our retailers, a lot of independent retailers, are going to see some effects to this, and so I'm hoping that we can all speak together, have a conversation, figure out how we can all work together better and reconsider a lot of these added costs and taxes that are going to be on the American people. Enough about me, though. I'd like to introduce Wendy Brew from Dry Ridge Farm and hear a little bit about how this is going to affect farmers.
Hi everyone, I'm Wendy Brew from Dry Ridge Farm. I raise pork, beef, and eggs in Buncombe and Madison counties with my husband Graham and our 2 young kids. We spent our fall and winter this year clearing a forest of fallen trees from our farm roads and pastures, repairing a shredded hoop house, and replacing our old laying hens with new pullets in the midst of the largest avian flu surge our country has ever seen. Like everyone in Western North Carolina, we've been looking forward to spring for 6 months solid. We've been ready for a break and a return to normalcy, and honestly, I'm ready to not have to be resilient. Today we're facing tariffs that'll increase our costs on everything from fertilizer and feed to construction materials and tractors. We're personally faced with the uncertainty of how retaliatory tariffs will affect our largest expense, our animal feed. This added cost and uncertainty is coming in April of all months, a time of year when farmers have already planned their growing season and when they're spending all their money and hoping for a good harvest. This year in particular, these tariffs are impacting farmers in our region at our time of greatest need. In Western North Carolina alone, Helene caused over $2.5 billion of crop losses, and that number does not include the cost of lost land, equipment, and infrastructure. I spoke with a friend of mine, Nicole, who with her husband has a vegetable farm with her husband in CLO. To say that the South Toe River destroyed their fields and farm doesn't do it justice. In addition to their unrecognizable fields, they lost all their equipment, all their infrastructure, In talking with Nicole about her farm's recovery, she was excited to share that her emergency federal funds, her offer had just come in last month, in March. To be clear, that is fast, and many, many farmers in our area are still waiting for the emergency funds they need to make their farm whole. These tariffs are pouring salt in a wound that is just now beginning to heal. Nicole's emergency funding is allowing her to start rebuilding their farm's infrastructure. Everything she has left to buy will be drastically more expensive than she budgeted for. The plywood she purchased last week was from Alberta, and she pointed out that she can't stockpile what she needs because she doesn't have the sheds to store them. Across our state, tariffs will have the same impacts on our largest agricultural producers, our pork, poultry, tobacco, and sweet potato growers, all of whom have also faced the worst drought ever recorded in North Carolina history last year. Our state is the third largest producer of pork in the country, and we export 25% of the pork we produce annually. To be clear, many of those exports are specialty cuts that aren't popular with U.S. consumers, so the industry isn't facing a redirection to domestic markets. They're facing a straight loss of those products. Both the North Carolina Pork Council and the American Farm Bureau Federation have issued statements encouraging our leaders to work on free trade agreements that eliminate tariffs and other barriers to international trade. If Hurricane Helene clarified anything in my mind, it is that I farm because there's nothing more rewarding than feeding our community. Despite the bad years and the bad weather, there are times when we get it right, and the weather cooperates with our plan. Those are the years that keep our love and pride alive in the work we do, and North Carolina farmers really needed 2025 to be one of those years. Thank you. And up next is Leah Ashburn, President and CEO of Highland Brewing.
Good afternoon. I'm Leah Ashburn, family owner, CEO, and president of Highland Brewing here in Asheville, North Carolina. My father, Oscar Wong, started Highland in 1994 in a basement, and we've since grown into a 40-acre campus with weddings, volleyball courts, live music, disc golf, markets, a playground. We're the largest native and family-owned brewery in North Carolina, and we sell beer to 4 states. But we're still small and independent, proudly so, and we are a complement to our community. Right now we're under serious strain from tariffs, especially on aluminum. Most of our beer is put in cans, and our aluminum prices have increased 17% this calendar year and are expected to grow even higher. With Canadian and Mexican tariffs, we're facing serious profitability issues and tough decisions. We can't raise price because consumers have hit their limit on what they're going to pay for a 6-pack. We have studied this carefully. The U.S. can't simply pivot to making aluminum cans. Mining is not done here. Aluminum is 96% brought in from other countries, and we are dependent on Canada. The effort to make aluminum here would be complex, costly, and take a lot of time. It won't come soon enough. And we don't have options. Consumers have spoken that they want aluminum cans. Beyond cans, we're also seeing cost increases in building materials, in bottle caps, and even grain, most of which comes from Canada. The growing region in the US has shrunk and has grown more into Canada as it has shrunk in the US. So we are more reliant on Canada for grain. This year alone, these increases, aluminum, grain, will cost us at least $100,000. That's jobs. Small businesses, as we've said, are the backbone of our country and especially of our special city. And we're not quite getting the support that we need to be competitive. Highland has always been more than a brewery. We're a community space, a good neighbor, and we need a place where people, and we are a place where people naturally showed up after the storm to give and volunteer and also to receive support after Helene. These tariffs make it harder for us to continue in our role. We need trade policies that offer flexibility, stability, and a fair shot at being competitive and successful so that we can continue to be a brewery and continue to be the community servant that we have always been. Thank you. Next up is Jake from Eno.
Hello everyone, my name is Jake Vertel. I'm with Eagle's Nest Outfitters, best known as Eno. We are an outdoor goods manufacturer, best known for our hammocks and hammock accessories. You'll hear a lot of the same sentiment expressed by those behind me, so I can keep our statement brief here, because it's very similar. Eno has been significantly impacted by the rising steel and aluminum tariffs, which have nearly doubled costs on our core product lines in recent years. When Section 301 tariffs took effect in 2018, Eno absorbed much of an initial 25% tariff, leaving several of our steel and aluminum products only marginally profitable. Now, with an additional 20% plus tariff being imposed, absorbing these costs is simply not feasible without raising prices. This presents a growing challenge for Eno as we risk pricing ourselves out of the US market. While import costs have risen dramatically, even if a domestic supply chain were available for those products and all of the associated components, shifting to domestic production remains far too expensive to achieve even remotely competitive pricing that would be acceptable to the US customer. As a US brand, Eno takes pride in producing the highest quality, responsibly made products we can, but these tariffs are eroding our competitiveness in the US retail market. Unwilling to compromise on our high quality standards, these tariffs are giving advantage to direct-to-consumer brands, many based abroad, that continue to flood the US market with low quality products imported directly from the very countries these tariffs were intended to penalize. Thank you. And with that, I will introduce Mary Carol Dodd, owner of Red Scout Farm.
Hi, my name is Mary Carol Dodd, owner of Red Scout Farm in Black Mountain, North Carolina. My family has owned our land for 125 years, and in 2016, I started our farm, a small certified organic, no-till vegetable farm. We grow high-value crops and sell through a CSA, through farmers markets, and to local restaurants. I've been talking to my suppliers, and the warning signs are there for tariffs to have a real impact. A lot of what we use on small farms comes from Canada and Mexico. Greenhouse supplies, potting soil, tools, even some seeds and insect netting. I just made a big order on insect netting this week before the tariffs go into effect because I know prices could spike. I spoke with my potting soil supplier, and he said prices could increase between 8 and 10% because some of those ingredients come from Canada. Harvest baskets, fertilizer, and all other essentials are also expected to rise. For small farms like mine, where profit margins are already razor thin, these cost increases hit hard. When tool prices go up, or soil gets more expensive, or insect netting becomes unaffordable, we either have to raise prices on our customers or cut somewhere else. And that often means it's even harder to pay workers a fair wage. We want to be able to support our workers and support ourselves. But every added burden makes it harder to keep going. In Western North Carolina, most all farms are small, and local food systems matter. They're essential, not just for our health, but also for national security. If we lose our farms now, the next natural disaster or pandemic could leave communities without access to fresh food. Most farms in our region are still healing from the devastating impacts of Hurricane Helene. Tariffs would be yet another blow that could push small farms to close their doors. We should be making it easier for family farms to survive, not harder. We need to nurture the people that are growing food for their communities. Because if we don't, there won't be any of us left. And if we don't have farms, we won't have food. Thank you. And I'd like to pass it on to Vince Tursey from Dissolver Brewing.
Hey, my name is Vince Tursey. I'm from Dissolver, a small brewery, winery, cidery, restaurant, bar in Asheville, North Carolina. We opened 5 years ago now, right before the pandemic, so that was our first hurdle. We experienced what happened during the pandemic, which was a supply chain breakdown. It was extremely difficult at the time to source aluminum cans because larger manufacturers ended up gobbling up all of the available supply as consumer demand shifted and it went to on-site consumption, thereby taking soda cans and other beverages home in cans. Since we dealt with all of that, we got out of it. We opened up a second tap room in Durham, and we've continued to be able to grow and build something that we're proud of. The supply chain issues never really went away, however. After Hurricane Helene shut our tap room down in Asheville, we were able to pivot and grow our business regardless because of our second location, but many local businesses in Asheville did not have that benefit. After talking to them, these tariffs are going to impact everything, not just from farms, but restaurants, clothing supplies, everything that we consume. The cost of animal feed going up is going to impact the cost of grain, which impacts the cost of food, which impacts the cost of sitting down at a restaurant. The cost of fertilizer is going to impact the cost of beer. It's going to impact the cost of spirits. Nothing is safe from these tariffs. The policy essentially is a total loss for small businesses. It's based on the idea that we can just start manufacturing everything here overnight, and that's not how a free trade market existed in the first place. So to think of the idea of being able to switch to that overnight is not a very plausible thing. Requires quite a bit of infrastructure, and the biggest impact that we've had through all of this was the unknown of a lot of these tariffs and the cyclical changing nature of it, including the retaliatory effect. It's impossible to plan. We are now in Q2 of a business year, and with unknown price hikes and changes, and those consistently going back and forth, it's been really difficult to understand what the year ahead looks like. Rising costs mean we have to eventually pass that down to the consumer. And as everyone else has stated, there is a limit for what consumer demand will take in terms of a price that they're willing to pay. We want people to understand that we're doing everything we can to keep costs down and stay in business, everyone up here. Instead of getting support, we've been facing government policies that actively make all of our jobs harder. At the end of the day, it's not just small breweries like myself getting hurt. It's the consumer that pays the price. As my grandma used to say, an eye for an eye makes the whole world go blind. So the retaliatory effect of all of this is just going to have a negative cycle that started years ago with COVID through the supply chain, and especially in areas like North Carolina and California with the wildfires. The infrastructure has never really had an opportunity to heal. So this is, again, taking off of what everyone else has been saying, rubbing salt in the wound. So with that, I'll hand it over to Will McEntee of Tariff Costs Us.
Thank you so much, Vince, and thanks to all of our speakers, and especially to Devil's Foot and Ben and the team here for hosting us today. I'm Will McEntee with the Tariffs Costas Project. As you just heard, the steel and aluminum tariffs are already having a real impact for manufacturers and the brewing industry here in Western North Carolina. And the threat of additional tariffs will have an even greater impact on those industries, as well as for our farmers and other small businesses here in Western North Carolina. We're now able to open up for questions from reporters if folks have them. Please just state your name and outlet, and if you could just kind of direct your question to whomever you'd like to direct your question to.
First of all, I'd like to ask, are any of your businesses employing more than 70 people? If you raise your hand. So all small businesses. The president has said he's using this in part for experts that are weighing in as a negotiating tactic. How long do you think that you can sustain your business past 6 months with tariffs that could go in? Raise your hand. Past 6 months.
I wouldn't even put a time on it. I don't think any of us would put a time on it. I think what it would require is we all have to make decisions. And if that's going to be to survive, it's a people problem. We hire the best people in the world. All of us would say that. Our employees are the best people in the entire world. We rely on them every day. We trust them. Their family. When this hurricane hit, my staff all showed up and helped other people and used this place to give out, right? We care about our people. And I don't see a single person go unemployed again after this hurricane already hit people. So I think what I would say is I wouldn't say we're going to put a time of when we're all going to be out of business. I'm going to say there's going to be hard decisions to be made, and it's going to hit people. We were talking about consumers and customers. We're talking about retailers. We're talking about restaurants, cafes, bars, places that we all support and vend to. But it's also our employees. And I don't think we talk about that enough. I think we talk about finance and dollars and not people. And this is a people thing. It's my 2 cents.
I think in the case of farms, the question might be this one? Yeah. I think in the case of farms, the question might be how long consumers will tolerate increased prices. There's no way that we can produce food, which you can't get around buying food, with increased costs without passing those costs to consumers. I guess that's.
Hi there. Oh, you wanna go ahead.
I'll just add from a manufacturing perspective, we've already purchased our product for the year, so our product is already coming in priced, labeled at the current rate. That's not something that we can increase overnight. So for our business, it is guaranteed that we will be taking this impact on the chin for the remainder of the year, which is detrimental to our business. Even if a consumer were to tolerate a price increase, that can't even go into effect until the new year.
So for us, the tariff issue is a compounding issue. So also recently there were cuts to the local farm food purchasing program through the USDA, and that allows food banks and schools and preschools and universities to purchase food from local farms. A lot of that funding has now been cut. So many small farms have not only lost a lot of their customers through the ability of those food banks and institutions to purchase food from them, but now they're looking at higher cost. So I think it's the combination of a lot of these different problems that are going to make it a lot harder for small farms to survive.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Hi, Melanie Green with Spectrum News 1. You all have all said that you might have to increase prices as a result of these tariffs. I'm curious about after Helene, did you have to raise your prices as a result of the impacts of the hurricane initially, like the
Yeah, after Helene, we did kind of everything that we could to not raise prices, which did mean taking it on the chin for a little bit. The increase in tariffs has made that pretty questionable. We've held off for a while in trying to not raise prices. We've switched to working with a lot of local farmers. All of our grain comes from within 500 miles of Asheville, or 95% of it does. Now with everything else that's going on top of the tariffs, some of that subsidy to some of those farms, the ability to export some of that grain, could potentially change the landscape of what that looks like. So these tariffs have, coupled with everything else that's going on in the government, has this chiseling effect that's continuously chipping away, where businesses at a certain point will not, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when we will have to raise prices.
As a larger small brewery, we're in distribution, so we manufacture here and then we sell to wholesalers who distribute to 4 states, and their percentage stays the same, so we're kind of getting squeezed in the middle. Pricing is determined in advance, sometimes by months, sometimes longer, and we look to the huge breweries, and if they take a price increase, then maybe we can too. But we have noticed that consumers are kind of at their limit right now, and they can opt to not buy craft beer, independent beer for something less expensive. So this squeeze is really going to hurt out businesses like ours.
Would any of you be able to give me an example of what you charge for a certain item, whether it's produce or beer, and what you're looking at possibly in the next 2 months that might have to go up, a hard example of your product?
So after Helene, like someone else said, we tried not to raise prices on our produce. We have a lot of customers that use SNAP benefits to buy our produce, and so they're already really squeezed with limited funds anyway to be able to purchase fresh, healthy food for their family. However, this spring, we are looking at raising prices on most all of our items by 25 to 50 cents, and our products range in price from $3 to $10. And so we will have to raise prices this year to be able to make it. So unfortunately, we don't want to do this. We don't want to have to pass the price on to consumers. It's hard for people to be able to afford to buy food right now. Everything has just gotten so expensive. And we're doing all that we can to try to be more efficient with what we have. But unfortunately, we're going to have to raise our prices. And if the tariffs go into effect, we might have to raise them again next year.
Any additional questions?
We haven't talked about solutions. What do we do about these tariffs?
Yeah, well, I don't know if anybody here could answer that. That might be a good question for policymakers.
I feel like as a world, we're going to be better off if we work together. And it's been very frustrating to see the bullying that's been happening recently. And I feel like we're stronger together, and we need to figure out how to work together and to be kind to one another. I feel like I have 2 sons. I try to teach that to my children. And I feel like as human beings, we should be able to look across borders and to be able to be kind to other people and work towards a better future for the whole world, not just for ourselves.
As a proud U.S. brand, I would just advocate to listen to U.S. brands. Yes, we might have foreign involvement, but at the end of the day, we're here based in the U.S. as U.S. companies. As I mentioned in my statement, as a premium goods manufacturer, who stands to benefit from this are non-premium good manufacturers, many of whom who are based abroad. So it's actually hurting U.S. companies rather than helping them.
Any additional questions? All right. Well, thank you all. Really appreciate you all coming to cover this and covering this issue locally here and some of the impacts. We do have just released some polling data that was in the field last week from a nonpartisan pollster, Morning Consult. My colleague Kat Howard has a handout and a QR code that has that. It shows that the majority of North Carolinian residents are very concerned about the impacts of tariffs. So we can share that with you. And then feel free to reach out to Kat, Howard, or myself if you have additional questions or need additional information after today's press conference. Thank you guys again. And thank you guys.